Look, thank you, Mr. Betts. I just want to start with there's a PMO manual. It's titled Guidelines for Answering Questions on Notice. Just, are you familiar with that document?
If you're referring, my understanding is it's guidance from the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, but I have seen a copy of the document, the one that was tabled in the Senate by Senator Chisholm.
I mean, before it was tabled in the Senate, had you seen the document? Had you read it yourself?
No.
You'd never seen it before?
No.
Okay. Are you aware of it being used by your department at all?
Yes, so it was circulated by the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. It was drafted by them and circulated to departments as guidance on answering Senate estimates questions on notice, which spanned multiple agencies. And that advice, which, as we've noted, has now been tabled in the Senate, states that it's consistent with the broader and long-standing document government guidelines for official witnesses before parliamentary committees and related matters. And it also makes clear that individual ministers, departments and agencies are ultimately responsible for the answers that they provide to Parliament and to its Senate committees, and that the guidelines constitute broad guidance only. Of the 294 questions on notice in total from this committee to our department, I understand that only 27 responses drew on that Prime Minister and Cabinet Department advice for their final form.
Oh, okay. So you've actually someone has gone back and calculated how many times this document was used?
So we had multiple different requests for or questions on notice which involved multiple agencies. The guidance was provided to us by the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, and yes, we did use it in a number of instances.
27 times?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
And is that over a particular period, or that's from the date of when this manual was distributed?
Sorry, it's 26, I'm now being told.
26.
Yeah. So that was, I'm not sure of the period, but
maybe I noticed
it wouldn't have been applied prior to the advice being circulated.
Yeah, if you just check if that's the total number since the manual was distributed. Obviously, it couldn't have been used before its distribution.
Right. Can I just add that at the most recent meeting of the Secretary's Board, the Secretary of the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet emphasised to secretaries that there was no change in the approach to the handling of Senate estimates questions on notice, that standard provisions applied in relation to quans which would have involved an unreasonable diversion of effort or went to sensitive matters, and that the guidance was issued as a pragmatic response to the large number of questions which required cross-department and cross-agency coordination.
And as we'll get to, I mean, the guidance is one thing, it's the content of the guidance that concerns me. The Minister obviously answers actually come from yourself, not from departments. Obviously departments prepare them, but the questions are to ministers. Have you seen this document? Have you read it yourself?
Only when I tabled it in the Senate, whenever that last sitting week was.
So you weren't aware that in 26 times this manual was being used?
No, I wasn't, but obviously I'm the representing minister here as an assistant minister, so that's not something I have coverage of in terms of preparation.
Have you reviewed the document since?
Well, I looked at it in terms of, briefly looked at it when I was responsible for tabling it in the Senate.
I mean, I might, while I've got you, I mean, there's lots of process questions here, but as I say, my concern is not that there's a guide to answering questions. That's fair enough. But in this guide, it says on page 6 of the guide to a headline header, meetings between department head and portfolio ministers. And the example question is how many meetings has the Secretary actually had with the ministers and their portfolio since a date. And the suggested draft response is the Secretary regularly meets with portfolio ministers and at times ministers outside the portfolio. I mean, that's not answering the question. I mean, now that I've read that too, I'm not sure if you've read it before, but do you consider that an answer to a question of the Senate? It's not answering the question.
Who are you asking?
I'm the Minister. I'm asking. Well, anyway, all questions are to the Minister, in fact, but I am directly asking the Minister.
I think you're putting a hypothetical that was.
It's not hypothetical. It's an actual text.
Reading out of the document, but I'm not aware in how we've answered questions in this committee, Senator Canavan.
Well, let's go to a real question.
I don't recall answering questions that way.
Let's go to a real question then of this nature.
While I can I emphasise this is advice from the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. Our department was not involved in the production of that advice.
I'm aware of that. Totally.
So the content of that advice is...
Well, just while I find...
You've been mindful
while I'm
not bound by it.
while I'm on that, my other concern here is that nowhere in this document that I can find is there any reference to the standing orders, rulings, precedents of the Senate. It appears to be a document drafted to defend the government, not to comply with the Senate. And I'm wondering, did your department at all take any advice on the compliance of this document with the practices and orders of the Senate?
So the guidance that we were given by the Secretary of the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet was that the guidance material that you're referring to should be read in the context of all the other standing instructions to departments, and didn't override those, but was designed to be pragmatic advice as to how to deal with requests which might otherwise be quite onerous by virtue of spanning multiple different agencies and departments. But as I say, we didn't draft the guidance, and nor did we apply it slavishly. We used our judgment, recognising that at the end of the day it is ministers that determine how to answer questions on notice, drawing on advice from the department, including draft answers.
Right. But did you take, my specific question there was, did you take any advice on whether this document did actually comply with the requirements of the Senate?
On the basis of the guidance I was given by the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, I didn't feel the need to.
Right. I mean, it seems to me just blatantly clear that this is not in compliance. I mean, there's no... If a senator asks a question, how many meetings have you had with somebody? Traditionally, that's been answered, and it's a direct question. And the only way it shouldn't be answered, of course, under the orders of this committee, is if there's a public interest immunity to do so. And there is no mention here of any public interest immunities or explanations of that. How is this advice about not answering a question about how many meetings you've had with somebody compliant with the public interest immunity exceptions to answering a question to the Senate?
I suggest you direct that question to the department which wrote the guidelines.
No, but you've got to be... these are questions to the Minister ultimately, not to you, Mr Betts. But the Minister has a responsibility to be compliant with the Senate, not the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. It's the Minister's responsibility. So are you responsible, Minister, to this Senate? You're actually a senator yourself, but you do not seem to be taking seriously the compliance with the rules of this committee.
Oh, well, obviously, ministers are responsible for the answers that they provide to committees. Same with departments, same with agencies.
So I've got a question here, question number 18, from Additional Estimates 23-24. In this committee, I asked Senator Brown, has Minister King spoken to the Queensland Government about the Queensland beef corridors? Senator Brown understandably took that on notice. The answer said, and I quote, it is common practice for Australian Government ministers to meet with their state and territory counterparts to discuss matters relating to their portfolio. I mean, that's not an answer. And that's taken straight out of this manual. And why isn't this government answering simple questions like that? You said you'd be the most transparent government in history, and you're basically not complying with the rulings of the Senate.
Well, that's not true, Senator Canavan, and I'd stack our record on transparency up against yours any day of the week. Any day of the week.
Well, I'm not sure any independent umpire would have come to that conclusion. Can I ask again then, has Minister King spoken to the Queensland Government about Queensland beef corridors?
I'd have to take it on notice.
Okay, thank you. Didn't get an answer last time. It'll be interesting to see if it comes back from the manual.
Sorry to interrupt you. Just that we do have media in the room, so if anyone has any issues, no, and you've been around longer than me, you know the rules, so.
No problems at all.
Great, thank you.
No worries.
Sorry, Senator Canavan.
Okay. Can I go back to the process type questions here? When did the department receive a copy of the PMO manual?
We'll see if we can answer that question. As I say, it was tabled, as I understand it, was tabled in the Senate on the 14th of May, but we'll check.
That was subsequent to media reporting, I believe, so...
Yes, that's correct.
It came in well before to you then.
We'll get you that answer, and we'll answer
We'll take it on notice.
We'll take it on notice, but we'll try and answer it as quickly as we can.
Okay. Could I just also ask who sent the document to the department? I mean, I'm not looking for the individual, but was it the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet or an official there?
I'd have to take that. Marie Bridger, Chief Operating Officer. I'll have to take that on notice because I suspect the department received it. It probably was spoken to in sort of a community of practice, and I don't know whether that happened pre or post the receipt of the document, so I'll take that one on notice.
What's a community of practice?
So that's often across government we have people who do like or similar roles. We've got a parliamentary community of practice that my staff attend.
Right. But presumably it would have been emailed or some such.
I imagine so, but I'm just trying to figure out whether it was handed at the community of practice. Was it emailed?
Maybe
was it
was
spoken
handed.
about?
It could have. Maybe it was distributed physically to avoid FOI. I imagine not. I imagine
Senator,
not.
My colleague, Mr. O'Neill, has just joined us, so he may well be able to answer that question for us.
Thanks, Mr. O'Neill. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Aaron O'Neill is my name. I represent the Ministerial, Parliamentary and Cabinet branch of the Department in the position of Assistant Secretary. Just to elaborate on Ms Bridges' commentary, Senator, that community of practice she referred to, it's a Band 1, an Assistant Secretary group of like-minded officials have responsibility for ministerial and parliamentary functions. We get together quite often. Throughout the course of April, we were advised that there was advice forthcoming from PMC that would provide some sharper guidance on the volume of quants we were administering. The exact date that was received, sorry, I don't have it. It was approximately late April, mid-April.
This year or last year?
This year.
Right.
Senator.
Oh, it's a very recent thing. Okay.
It was indeed. And
it leaked quickly. Okay, right.
Unhappy.
And that was disseminated to our department and other stakeholders from a generic PMC mailbox, and my counterpart at the Assistant Secretary was involved in that. That's all we have.
So you were the recipient of that?
Correct, Senator.
The article in Capital Brief, a publication I hadn't been familiar with, but they did some good work here. The article was published on the 30th of April 2024, so you received it in April 2024.
Indeed, Senator. I will get you the exact date very shortly.
Oh, well, good on those whistleblowers. Once you'd received it, how was that distributed among the department, or who was that sent to?
Certainly. The process we had from there, Senator, was because we had a large volume of quants across two committees, it was important that we did an analysis of where that advice applied to the current questions we had on our database and how we could align with the posture PMC promoted. And the key terminology in the document, Senator, was where applicable. So we defined this suite of questions we feel we could answer in line with that PMC guidance. This suite of questions we couldn't. And then we liaised with our multiple agencies and across those numerous touch points to just determine how we could answer the question in a timely and informative manner.
Can I just clarify, Mr O'Neill? So there was there was a bunch of questions. You went, yep, there's a public document, we can insert blah, 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 according to the manual. And then the bucket of questions that you said we can't genuinely answer the question. Who did you seek advice on about how to answer those questions? Did that go back to your Assistant Secretary, Community of Practice?
Some did. We have general discussions. Approximately every month we get together and we just test with each other across agencies how we're assessing. But for us internally, it was quite simply, here are the questions from the PMC advice. Some questions we had, I'm happy to run through a few with you.
No, you just said there were two buckets, the ones you could answer and the ones you couldn't. So Mr Betts said there were 26 questions out of all the quants that you used the manual for, and the rest weren't. Were they then disseminated to appropriate people within the department to answer and then send up to the Minister?
So they didn't.
Or did you go... I took it to your answer earlier that there was sort of like a general discussion in that community of practice, well, what do we do with the questions that we can't use the manual for?
I might just jump in. Senator, at times the advice leads you to go to your system and pull the data, and sometimes it's we don't have that data in our systems because our systems aren't configured in a way to capture that
we've got
data.
A lot of questions on that.
So sometimes that's why we actually can't comply with the advice. At other times, we've liaised with our Minister's office and they've given us some advice with regards to what we can provide, given some of our systems don't capture some of the data. So that goes to some of the why we haven't used some of the advice.
So it's quite an iterative process between the Minister's office and the department in terms of what the final QAN that's submitted is.
It can be. Ministers have the opportunity to ask for further advice. They have the opportunity to ask for redrafts of answers provided by the department, and our function at the end of that process is to ensure that what's submitted by way of an answer is factually accurate.
And then, as I recall, the Minister's job is to make sure it's politically feasible when you table it in the Senate. So you're confident that the department isn't doing the political work for the government?
Correct.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. Okay. So that was distributed. I suppose it comes back to my central concern here is that this community of practice meetings you have, you say you catch up regularly. Have you had a discussion about here's the rulings of the Senate, this is the relevant bits of OGES, it's not that many pages, I know, that deal with this, it's only a few pages. Is that discussed at all?
Yes, indeed, Senator.
Okay.
It was.
When? At that meeting? Meeting along with this PMO manual?
We met, the Assistant Secretaries got together approximately 3 weeks ago and ideas were shared about making sure where as possible we aligned with the PMC advice, and where possible we provide an informative and timely answer to this committee.
3 weeks ago, that was after the Capital Brief article about the manual?
Yes, and there were meetings before
that.
Okay,
so was that meeting called in response to the media?
No, I believe not. Okay. I can't speak on when PMC called them and the origins and why they called the meeting.
But at that meeting after the media article, you had a discussion about the fact that there's obligations under the Senate to answer questions.
Yes, indeed, Senator.
Did you have that? Had you had that discussion at one of these meetings before?
I wasn't.
You weren't a member of that, were you?
No, I've only recently.
Just to be clear, I'd never heard of this before. But this community of practice, you say, meets regularly, and it's been a long-standing body, if you like, or group of Band 1 SES.
How long it's been running for, I can't comment on, but I formed the view that it was quite an established group, and not just for Senate estimates processes, but all ministerial and parliamentary business.
I appreciate the position you're in, Mr O'Neill. My question's obviously not to you anyway, but can I ask on notice then, had other departmental officials at those meetings prior to the 30th of April been at meetings where a brief or a discussion of the Senate's rulings had been had to ensure compliance with the rules of this place?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Senator, can I just go back to your earlier question about the date we received that advice? I can confirm it was the 11th of April.
11th of April, okay,
Correct.
Thank you. So ended up in the media in 3 weeks. I'm sure there was a few good people in the public service a bit aghast at some of these directions. No wonder it leaked quickly. Just going to another specific question. I'm now at question 181 from additional estimates, 23-24. Senator Hume asked, please provide a list of all Commonwealth interdepartmental committees of which the department agency has membership. Please specify were there any changes to the list since October 2023. The answer is a direct quote from page 7 of the PMO manual. And I'll just read it out. It is a little lengthy, I apologise, but it shows the complete lack of answers here. The answer given was, an interdepartmental committee is a common governance body for cross-agency task forces where officials from representative agencies may discuss work and provide input on deliverables. Department of Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development, Communications and the Arts and its portfolio agencies are regularly involved in the work of IDCs. By their nature, IDCs can be established and conclude their work rapidly as the need arises. I mean, Minister, do you consider that an answer to that question?
Well, it was definitely an answer to the question.
In what way?
How?
You've just provided, the answer provides a description of IDCs, which was not asked for. We know what an IDC is. How is that an answer to... And it's a very simple question. How many IDCs are you a member of?
Well, an answer was provided, and obviously from your point of view it's not as satisfactory as it could be.
Are we speaking the same language here?
About how many IDCs her department, a well-established, well-respected department in the public service, is a member of. Why would Minister King want to obfuscate on the answer to that?
I'm not aware that she did.
Well, clearly the record shows she did.
Well, that's your
Clearly the
interpretation.
record shows there was no answer provided here. I mean, I wouldn't have thought this would be a very difficult question to answer. Can we get now? Well, how many IDCs is the department a member of? Do you have that, Mr Betts?
And have IDCs been surpassed by communities of practice?
The answer to the latter question is no, unfortunately.
Okay, good.
But, no, I mean, you have your answer, and the answer that was given is consistent with the guidance that was issued, and you're calling it PMO advice. My understanding is the Department of Prime Minister and
the
Cabinet.
determinant of answers, our standing orders
That's right.
So, sorry,
And this constitutes...
I recognise as public servants you have to, pay homage to PMC in the hierarchy of the world that you have to live in. But this committee is able to ask this department how many interdepartmental committees you're a member of.
Yes, you are.
And the fact that you're, as a secretary, you don't know the answer.
We'll take that on notice.
I mean, I'm
you
sorry.
don't know the answer.
I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure we could get that.
Sorry, Senator Canavan. Before we get out of hand, you had the lead. You were asking questions. Senator McKenzie came in and asked some more. But Mr Betts was ready to answer your question, and you cut him off. So, Mr Betts, did you wish to answer or not?
I was simply going to make the point that the answer that you have is the answer from the Minister, as is appropriate, and it is in line with the guidance issued by the politically impartial Department of Prime Minister.
I recognise the position you're in, Mr Betts, that it's the Minister signs off on these answers. Ultimately, it's you prepare them and you prepare them under ministerial direction. But these are answers from the Minister, and the Minister clearly is not answering his questions, and by doing so, putting you and your department in a very difficult and unnecessary position. But I wonder, just going to my question, can we get a list of the IDCs the department's a member of today? That shouldn't be difficult.
We'll take that on notice.
If we can come back to us today, we'll see if the Minister's office allows you to provide that list. I don't understand why it would be in any way a matter of national secrecy and or a massive diversion of your resources to provide that list.
Can I just emphasise that a number of the questions, there was more than 60% increase in the number of questions on notice from October through to February that required coordination across multiple agencies and departments, and a number of those involved, for us, coordination with 30 different agencies. For instance, there was a question 247 in relation to functions and official receptions. For each of the agencies that we need to go to and the divisions within our department, there is a requirement to attest to the factual accuracy of the information being provided and the consistency of presentation in relation to things like treatment of GST within the costings of those receptions. So you can see how a relatively simple question mushrooms into something which involves a very, very significant consumption of management time. And I think the objective of the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet's politically impartial advice was to try to minimise the diversion of resources. And that explains some of the answers that you've received.
And again, my point is not the guidance itself, not the coordination itself, it's the content of the guidance. It's clearly lacking and not consistent in any way with transparency to the Parliament.
Because it would be quite odd that as the manager of a huge department that you or Miss Bridger wouldn't know how many IDCs your officials participate in.
We could have answered that.
That would
in
be
the period
kind
we've
of
been
been
discussing
like,
this. It could have had the answer, I'm sure. Wouldn't have taken that long for someone to provide it to you. Anyway, we'll see if we get it today. We'll see if there's a new wind of transparency blowing through this place. I'll just go to another question. I won't hold up too long with specific questions. There's obviously a few. But
I'll keep the call with you.
Yep.
But Senator Roberts would like to ask a few, and I've indicated maybe by about 20 to 10.
Yep, that'll be fine.
Thank you.
So, question number 23, also from additional estimates. Senator Dunniam this time asked Senator Brown how often the federal member, Mr Mitchell, had advocated for the Tasman Highway corridor. I won't read the entire transcript, but Senator Brown takes it on notice, again understandably. And the answer is, as normal practice, the Department of Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development, Communications and the Arts is not aware of all conversations between ministers or their officers. However, the department is aware that ministers' officers regularly engage with each other. Nice to know. So, I mean, my main point with this one, slightly different from the other one, is as I come back to the questions that we ask are to ministers, not to the department. This answer has been provided. I know obviously departments help and assist, but this answer then is written as if the question is to the department. It's not. It's to the minister. And so the minister can obviously tell us how many meetings she or he has had with other people. That's why they're accountable to the parliament. So my question really is the minister, maybe the department, to say something. But, Minister, why aren't your own ministers answering questions to them of this place? Why are you buck-passing it to your department?
Well, I wouldn't characterise it that way, Senator Canavan. I think that answers are being provided. Obviously, you've got issues around how accurate those answers are. It's your right to put questions to us in regards to that, like you're doing today.
It's a total embarrassment for this government. It is treating the Senate with contempt.
Well, that's
utter
ridiculous.
contempt. Utter contempt. Because
this
is a very simple question that, in my time in this place, has been normally answered by all governments, different persuasions. And you're now completely non-transparent.
And more than doubled.
But that's not an excuse not to provide these simple answers. This Parliament can ask questions.
Hard answer. Just like the IDC question.
But we're dealing with the volume.
And again,
Senator Hume alone has put through 13,000 questions.
Sorry,
all right, a couple more process questions.
Sorry, Senator Cavan. Look, we've got 2 days, and I'm very happy to sit here for 2 days and listen to all the questions. But can we just 2 days in this portfolio, and you and I will share another 2 in agriculture. But can I just encourage colleagues, look, please, if a question is asked, give the person the opportunity to answer, and you'll get the call. Let's just try and keep some order.
So, just moving back to some other questions, the manual which was distributed, Mr. O'Neill, you mentioned earlier, was that also sent to agencies in your portfolio?
Senator, can I come back to you very quickly on that one? I just want to be 100%.
No, it's fine. And I suppose we can ask the agencies later directly, but I might have imagined it perhaps came from PMO to you to the agencies rather than PMO to your agencies. So we'll see. You mentioned you've used this document 26 times. Have you similarly looked at whether your agencies have used the document, and if so, how many times?
No, we haven't. We haven't done that investigation, Senator.
Are you aware or not whether the agencies are using the manual?
We have no awareness, Senator.
Okay, we'll chase them up later.
But since the guidance relates to questions which refer to multiple agencies, you'd expect the department to be in the loop on those, so we would have a degree of visibility, but we can't confirm that absolutely.
The 26 questions, can I get a list of the questions that you've used the manual for?
Yeah, and you'll see that they correspond to the pro forma answers in the guidance.
Yeah, we've got a few obviously, but they're just useful. Can we get a list of those? Sorry, Hansard doesn't recognise nods. If we could just
I'll just make sure we get it printed and we'll provide it.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Look, I mean, I realised. Actually, I didn't realise until this morning how quickly this has only been in existence for less than 2 months. And so, look, I realise, Mr. Betts, you, as you said, you hadn't even seen it in detail. But now that we have gone through it, and at least part of this document is a bit of a joke, I mean, are you still going to direct your department to use this manual, or at least use it in full?
The guidance makes it clear that individual ministers, departments and agencies are ultimately responsible for the answers that they provide to Parliament and its Senate committees. We had 294 questions on notice from this committee, of which, as we said, 26 were answered in accordance with that guidance. My maths suggests that means 268 weren't, and we generated answers for those using our internal resources. So we will be guided by the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, but we will also use our judgment, as indicated in the guidance, that we should.
Okay, well, I hope there is a bit of reflection on the use of this manual. I might just Mr O'Neill's delay, but just at that community of practice meeting you had, was there any discussion of this manual being updated in response to the controversy or further directions being provided?
Senator, all meetings I have been in attendance, there has not been any indication of further advice forthcoming.
Right, okay. And so your understanding is this still a live document that should be used?
That is my understanding,
Right,
yes.
okay. Well, that seems a little inadequate. But, all right, any other, did you have others on this? We might use the opportunity to go to Senator Roberts.